Welcome, everybody. You are on the Full Court Press, where we talk about NBA basketball. And in order for us to talk about NBA basketball, I always love bringing on people who know their stuff. And let me tell you right now, with the topic that we have going on this evening, I could not find a person better to talk about that NBA stuff than my man Drew Wolin, who writes for www.nbadraft.net. My man Drew and I have been talking about this at length through the course of the day, because only in America can you do what guys like Jason Kidd has managed to do. In basically less than 72 hours, this man has gone from being one of the most beloved players in their own franchise to probably being one of the most hated. Drew, welcome to the show, man. And first of all, give me your thoughts about what just transpired with Jason Kidd and the Brooklyn Nets today.
Well, it was only 24 hours ago. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Cal. This is my first time on the Full Court Press. Loving that intro. You got to give me the name of that song.
Oh, yeah, man. First of all, big up to Exhibit, because this is old school. I love bringing out the old school stuff. And this was just reminiscent to me of exactly what we want from the Full Court Press. When you listen to the song, it's actually called Los Angeles Times, and it's from the album 40 Days and 40 Nights. Exhibit, it's absolutely killed this track, but it's one of the meanest beats during my, you know what I'm saying, when I love to always claim like my era of hip hop, so this is why I love it so much. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yeah. This news, it was only 24 hours ago. I was saying Jason Kidd is basically talking himself out of the league. What's going on? The Bucks are never going to give in to this kind of behavior. They already got a coach in Larry Drew. Of course, they conduct business better than this, than to fire their standing coach and bring in a guy who basically just made a power play for more, for more power, got denied by his current team, and burned that bridge, and now he's got no other choice but then to join these Bucks teams. I thought, no way would the Bucks actually give him this out, but here we are, and I stand corrected.
It's interesting, and for people who are not aware of the situation, Jason Kidd, over the course of this weekend, has expressed dissatisfaction with, I guess, his stature as being a head coach for the Brooklyn Nets. And what basically has transpired is that he took that up with the big brass, with the Brooklyn Nets, really superseding general manager Billy King, indicating to Prokhorov and the ownership group that he would like to have more empowerment, basically have an entitlement that is over general manager, basically, so he can make more informed decisions about the team and the transactions that the team will be making moving forward. And clearly Prokhorov was like, no, I don't think so. And it just boggles my mind, because when I look at what Jason Kidd has done in this year for the Brooklyn Nets, I can't understand what he actually had that was going to leverage him to even get that kind of power from the Brooklyn Nets organization. So my question to you is this, Drew. A person like Jason Kidd comes into this situation. He sees that Steve Kerr gets 5 year, $25 million. He sees a guy like Derek Fisher get 5 year, $25 million. Understandable. He has a 4 or 5 year deal worth $10.3 million. Do you still make an argument to ownership about the fact that you should be getting paid as much as those guys are getting paid from their respective teams?
Well, you know what, Cal, I've heard that might have been an argument that Kidd used. To me, that's almost a little childish. It's like he agreed to the deal that the Nets were offering him, and then after the fact, completely independently of Jason Kidd's deal, maybe influenced somewhat as Kidd, kind of blazing that trail for, players that are, for Derek Fisher at least, players that are just retiring from the league and going straight into coaching. Maybe Jason Kidd kind of blazed that trail for Fisher to do that, and, Kidd's season went okay, so ownership felt comfortable giving Fisher, that kind of money. But, yeah, overall, I don't think that's a reason to go to ownership. I like to call them the Russians, the Nets ownership. It feels like we're in an action movie, the Russians, going to Prokhorov and his crew. If Kidd's going...
It sounds more official, doesn't it?
Yeah, right, going to the Russians. If kids going to the Russians saying, so and so is making more money than I did, and we basically came into this situation under the same circumstances. Former player, retired, go right into coaching. He's making more money than me now. I'm going to throw a fit until I get more money. I don't know if that's actually it. I mean, maybe. I wouldn't put it past him. But I think what it sounds like it's more is that he didn't really feel safe in his current position. Let's not forget, Billy King was maybe, probably, likely looking to fire Jason Kidd as early as, midway through last season. They were really struggling. I would say the majority of people would argue that Kidd, given how much turnover there is in sports, that you could argue the Kid deserved to get fired. He was not winning. The Nets were really bad the first half of the season, really, really bad. And the Nets had the biggest payroll by far, I think, in NBA history. Correct me, I'm pretty sure in NBA history. So, to me, it's a little bit less about the money, Kidd's decision, and more about, well, Billy King tried to fire me. To feel like I have any kind of security in my current job, I need power over Billy King. I need to make sure that he's not, actively looking for another coach, which honestly, there's not really any reason for Billy King to be looking for another coach. Kidd finished out the season relatively well. I think ownership, Billy King were happy with him. And then the only other theory that I've really heard, and again, this is probably more rumored, was that Jason Kidd felt that they needed to change up their front court, and he wanted to trade with the Bucks Brook Lopez and Mirza Teletovic to the Bucks for shot-blocking phenom Larry Sanders, who, when he's not getting into fights and breaking his hand, is one of the best shot blockers in the game, and Ersan Ilyasova, the post-All-Star Game assassin. Some advice to any fantasy basketball players out there.
You do realize that the consistency of Ilyasova's game, right? Only his last name actually has more interest than he does right about now, because he's a big question mark. Every single time he comes on this basketball court, you don't know what you're getting from him, and you're going to expect to tell me that Jason Kidd was going to somehow find a way and magically pull out that NBA game that Ilyasova and everybody in Milwaukee has been so like sitting at the edge of their seats just waiting to see jump out of that arena for the Bradley Center for. I can't see that.
That's the post-All-Star Game assassin, man. Let me drop this gem on any fantasy basketball players out there. Don't draft Ilyasova. Somebody else is going to take him in the 5th, 6th round. And guess what? They're going to get frustrated with him, drop him month number 3, and that's right around when he starts playing well. You pick him off waivers, you're good. You got 15 and 10 with 2 threes for the rest of the year. You're gold, so do that. Hey, Cal, you brought up a good point. That's not a good trade. If you're the Nets, it's not a good trade, right? Mirza Teletovic is.
This is the same Jason Kidd that wants to be president of basketball operations. If you're going to tell me that is going to be your signature trade, that puts you in that seat right about now, even I need to get slapped by Larry Sanders. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, it's coaching is one thing, but when it comes down to it, and this is not rumored. Okay, so that last trade, I said that's more of a rumor. It's not official or anything like that. But an official reason out of the Nets camp is they didn't think that Kidd could handle all that responsibility quite yet. I mean, he's not even a half season removed from being a very mediocre coach. He led a bad team. Yes, he finished strong, but let's pump the brakes a little bit, all right? Jason Kidd's a first-year coach who had half of a good season, and he's trying to take on...
Drew, not to interrupt, I only wish that Pat Riley was the one who was talking to Jason Kidd in this and just be like, listen, Jason, you just need to get a grip. Everybody right now just needs to get a grip.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was put out there.
Yeah, I mean, Pat Riley has a way with words, I guess, and a way with connecting with his players. I think that maybe Kidd could use some of that.
The one thing, and I'm talking with my man Drew Wolin, who writes for www.nbadraft.net, and you can catch him on the Twitter side. Be sure to look him up. He is at 914BigD123. And he writes some really, really excellent stuff and gives great insight. And I'm sure as you kind of followed this situation, Drew, the one thing that to me that stands out more than anything is the reasoning or the mentality behind why Jason Kidd would actually try and execute this. Because, this was something that was discussed on my show, The Baseline, that I do with my man Warren Shaw. And one of the things that we had talked about is this is what is becoming the trend in the NBA, is that coaches no longer are looking to just become head coaches, that they want something where there is a sense of entitlement to be able to make decisions, or I guess where their decision making or thoughts in decision making can be valued more than just being perceived as, well, you're the head coach, so we're still going to do what we have to do. So guys like Stan Van Gundy, guys like Doc Rivers, they're not just walking into situations where they're saying, hey, I don't mind coaching this team, but in order for me to coach this team, I need these other amenities to be added, to my responsibilities. And it just amazes me because someone like Jason Kidd, who has no experience in the head coaching position, is actually stepping up to an ownership group with the intent to say, I want to take over a responsibility that really requires at least a few years to be seasoned. And how strange does that seem?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of easy to chalk this one up to Jason Kidd's being a baby. I've been trying to stay away from that, as more information comes out. But I mean, again, back to what we were talking about just the beginning of the show, is it seems like Jason Kidd might have just not felt comfortable in his job security and then was basically throwing a fit until he got what he wants. He's not ready for it. Stan Van Gundy has an incredible amount of information in his head. He knows basketball inside and out, and guess what? He's a hell of a lot more experienced than Jason Kidd. He coached the Magic. He coached a very difficult team in the Magic, filled with your boy Dwight Howard back in the day, who was never an easy coach. I would imagine, maybe even especially when he was younger. Stan Van Gundy's a guy who can handle that. Jason Kidd, he has given ownership, he has given fans, media. He's given us absolutely no reason to believe that he can handle that. He had an okay first season, and he's still, I don't think that we're, gonna just brush aside that he's known to be, when he was a player, he had a reputation for maybe being a coach killer, as they say. You don't like to label a guy without having all the facts, but those rumors were out there. Now we know for a fact he wasn't liking what Lawrence Frank was doing. So now he's costing his ownership over $1 million a year. Lawrence Frank is still on payroll for another 5 years as basically the highest paid scout in world history.
I would love to have that job right now.
Yeah, please sign me up. That's what I'm saying. But Jason Kidd, he has character flaws. Like I said, he just has done nothing to prove that he deserves this job.
Let's just go ahead and look at it bare bone facts. What does this say now about Jason Kidd's legacy as a Brooklyn Net, as a New Jersey Net? Does this truly and severely hamper the organization's ability to kind of stand by him? This guy, it's kind of funny. I was speaking with a colleague of mine earlier today, and he was like, honestly, I want them to take down his jersey off the rafters. I want them to unretire his jersey. I mean, that's what some people are actually saying right now, given what Jason Kidd has just done. Yeah. So, I mean, is that a fair assessment? Do we think that Jason Kidd and the diva complex that he's exhibiting right now merits the idea that because of the fact that he's acted the way that he's acted, that the Brooklyn Nets are within their rights to basically wipe the slate clean of him altogether, as if to not acknowledge him as their greatest player, to not acknowledge the things that he did for this team, this organization, some 10 plus years ago, and just really hold it down to we are tired of shouldering your ego.
Yeah, well, I think again, every fan, that initial fan reaction, everyone's entitled to it. It's never right or wrong. When it comes down to it, Cal, I'm trying to think of a parallel. I really can't. I'm trying to think, like, say Isaiah Thomas, the most hated man in New York. Say that he did what he did in New York. Say that he did it in Detroit. I'm trying to think, like, would that jersey come down? Would they unretire his jersey? I don't know. What Jason Kidd did for the Nets is indisputably incredible. I think that it was the biggest, how do you phrase it? The biggest win-loss turnaround, or the biggest jump in wins from the season before he got there to the season that he, joined from the Phoenix Suns. He joined the Nets, and they went something. We'll have to fact check this later, but something like 25 wins to 55. A huge jump. You know,
there's no denying his physical attributes, what he brought to the court, his ability. He really did carry that basketball team. And look, taking them to 2 NBA finals, I mean, unbelievable. But to your point, though, if we were going to make that parallel discussion about Isaiah Thomas doing the Detroit Pistons dirty, I mean, I can't see the Detroit Piston fan base actually taking it to that extreme, because Isaiah Thomas did win them some rings. So
it's true. Isaiah's got some rings. Jason Kidd does not, at least with the Nets. But yeah, I don't know. To kind of play off that idea, I think let them be separate. Jason Kidd was still a baby when he was playing for the Nets, but he won. He produced results.
Right, I agree with you totally. I agree with you totally. I'm just saying that, like, given the fact that the Brooklyn fan base, and maybe let me put it in this perspective to kind of circle around the idea of why there may be that much more intensified hate for Jason Kidd right now at this moment. The Brooklyn Nets just came to Brooklyn, right? They were in New Jersey. So now the whole idea is that this Brooklyn Nets team, this is the second year of the Brooklyn Nets being the Brooklyn Nets. But the whole idea behind this is that the fan base is going to be truly behind this team. It's a better fan base. This is supposed to be, the awakening, and Brooklyn is going to finally take over. It's like New York is an afterthought. It's all about Brooklyn. Blah 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 blah. Everything is pretty much in place, and at the forefront of it, they put the face of the franchise. The face of the franchise wasn't even playing on the basketball court. The face of the franchise was standing there knocking water. Trying to buy himself an additional timeout in order for him to draw up a play for his team. You know what I'm saying? That was the face of the Brooklyn Nets franchise. And then now you get to the end of this season, all of a sudden he's pulling this kind of stunt. It's unbelievable to me.
Well, and kind of to that point, yeah, you're right. The Brooklyn Nets, they want to build that family, that loyalty kind of feeling like what the Spurs and maybe the Miami Heat have, right? So much for that. But kind of speaking to that same point, as far as how an organization is presenting itself and carrying itself, I think that this is such a bad look for the Milwaukee Bucks. The way that they're doing Larry Drew, and sorry, I don't mean to jump the gun. I'm sure we were going to get to it in a minute, but the way the Bucks treated and are currently treating Larry Drew throughout this whole process. I know that there's only 30 head coaching positions in the NBA, and therefore in the world. There's 30. There's not a lot. But if I'm a coach and I have an option between the Bucks and any other team, knowing how ownership handled this situation, I'm not going to Milwaukee. I mean, they really just did a pretty despicable job handling this situation. Larry Drew is reading through Twitter about how his job is probably not safe anymore,
And even on Twitter, there were actual pictures of Larry Drew with his arms around the face of the Milwaukee Bucks franchise, Jabari Parker, and a new owner, and they're all smiles. And this is in less than 48 hours removed from the NBA draft, that he is now finding out that the Bucks are already making a play to bring Jason Kidd over and to basically take his job. And I don't know what kind of conversation didn't happen. I don't know if at any point ownership reached out to Larry Drew through the course of this to say, I'm just letting you know this is where we're at. If it really came down to the point, and we'll have to find this out as things begin to unfold, but if it really comes out that the ownership never bothered to communicate at any point during the course of this situation to say, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're trending to do, even at the exit interview stage where usually you tell a person, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. We'll figure this out after we get through the NBA draft, what we're going to do with regards to your future. A guy that you already still have a 3-year deal on. If you were planning to do all of this stuff and at not one point try and communicate that to your current head coach, it really says a lot about how far off the Milwaukee Bucks have fallen from just 3 years of them playing in an NBA playoff game to what they're now doing.
Right. Yeah, there seemed to be a hell of a lot of planning going on behind closed doors without any kind of communication to Larry Drew, you know. But I will say, this is an example of the ugly side of sports, Cal.
Yeah.
It's ugly. And they always say, treat this as a business. Don't expect anybody to necessarily be loyal to you. I was reminded today that Larry Drew might have been involved in a very similar situation in Atlanta. Again, not confirmed, but Mike Woodson was coaching in Atlanta, and apparently, supposedly, Larry Drew had some part in getting Woody out, and then of course he went in and filled in, as head coach of the Hawks. But not to say that Larry Drew was not treated right in this situation, but it sounds like he might have been a part of something very similar in the past, and it's an example of how sports can get ugly.
You know, and it actually leads me into this question, and this is the Full Court Press, Cal Lee, with my special guest, Drew Wolin, who writes for www.nbadraft.net. Drew, this is the question that I know, and I'm glad you transitioned this for me, because one of the things that I don't think that really does get talked about when we're kind of getting into the dynamics of the business of the NBA is the fraternities. Okay, we often talk about the players and we talk about the owners, but we don't ever separate the coaches. We always seem to kind of jumble them with the owners. But what we've been seeing over the last 5 to 7 years is that the owners have no loyalty to their coaches. And ultimately, the coaches are going to need to kind of galvanize themselves if they expect to have the type of respect that I think that they deserve. We've seen numerous situations where coaches have been fired with ill just. Situations where if it's a matter of results, the results are there. And just because you don't like the person doesn't mean that you can't respect the person and what they're doing to help your organization win and give you revenue. Okay, we bring up Mark Jackson
shaking his head yes right now.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? When I look at a situation like Jason Kidd and the Brooklyn Nets, if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I don't necessarily have to be loyal to Jason Kidd. There's nothing that Jason Kidd did this past season that would make me feel like, oh my God, I need to have you still coaching my team. This was an experiment. And like any experiment, it was up to Jason Kidd to prove that the experiment works. Right. You know, his situation wasn't similar to Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson inherited a bad basketball team. In many people's perception, Mark Jackson was basically set up to fail because they didn't think that he was going to last more than 3 years. They just needed a go-between so they could find whoever they thought was going to be their head coach. Then once they started seeing this team actually producing wins increasingly better, Mark Jackson became the poster child for any head owner to say, I want to go and pull that guy from TNT. Oh, he's with Fox? Maybe we should interview him. Oh, he's with ESPN too? Maybe we should interview him too. I don't see the fraternity in the coaches because then that would have prevented what Jason Kidd just did to Larry Drew.
Yes, very true. That's a very good point. Jason Kidd seemed to have no regard, no care for what would happen to Larry Drew. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, as they say, Cal. But yeah, as far as coaching goes, it's a very high-paying job in the NBA, and I would say probably even more so than playing. It's a what have you done for me lately. I mean, guys can get booted for something as simple as we don't like you. The Warriors ownership pretty much said as much when they fired Mark Jackson. They said he did a great job with the team. He did a great job on the court. He won us a lot of games. We just didn't see eye to eye. Whatever that means, I can't imagine that means anything other than we didn't like him. We didn't get along. Even in Memphis, Lionel Hollins was doing a great job. People were talking about Lionel Hollins losing his job potentially in Memphis. I don't know how you do much better than Lionel Hollins was doing in Memphis. It sometimes for no rhyme or reason, it looks like coaches can just lose the jobs, and like you're saying, apparently even from one coach to another, maybe it's not as much loyalty as you'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, we could read off the list. Mike Brown, I mean, he had Groundhog's Day happen to him in Cleveland twice. And if the ultimate indictment, Phil Jackson, okay? to want to come back and coach the team that you helped win those rings, that everybody is demanding that you go back and get this guy, Jim Buss, who now runs this team, basically just, I mean, you talk about hit and run. I mean, that's about as bad as it could possibly get. And it just amazes me that head coaches don't seem to have they don't seem to be more centered in looking out for each other the same way that players are trying to do now, that owners seem to do now during the collection bargaining agreement. It just seems like the coaches are the ones that just love to get caught in the crossfire, and they're the same ones that PR the situation. Oh, it's on me. You know, I didn't do a good enough job. I'm glad that the organization gave me an opportunity, things of that nature. And we know that there's more to it than that. And it's just sad because, you know, great coaches, and listen, what was the perfect example of why coaching is so important in the NBA? You look at the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, they're a perfect example of what coaching can do when your team may not be as talented as the opposing team. Sometimes it takes a good coach to get those guys to play above and beyond what they may even think they're capable of playing. And you're seeing that with most of these teams. So let's go ahead and cap this off by the compensation aspect that the Milwaukee Bucks gave to the Brooklyn Nets in order to send Jason Kidd over to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
2 second-round picks. One for 2015, I believe, and the other one's for 2019.
Right.
If you're the Brooklyn Nets, are you completely satisfied with that? And if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, have you lost your damn mind?
I mean, it doesn't seem like much compensation, does it, on the Nets' part? But Jason Kidd kind of strong-armed his way into this, and looks like the Nets kind of, again, those Russians. The Russians just wanted him to go away. They wanted off with him. And then, hey, taking 2 second-round picks for him is probably the nicest that you could expect out of these Russians, who could have handled this situation a little worse. But yeah, I don't know. These second-round picks, who knows? They'll probably, given the history of these types of trades, the second-round picks probably won't even stay with the Nets. They'll be traded 100 more times in the meantime. It's really just the Bucks gave the Nets something, and Jason Kidd had no other option than to go to the Bucks. The Nets, I actually heard the Nets were holding out for one pick. Originally, it was just this 1 second-round pick the Bucks were offering, and the Nets wanted a first-round pick. Bucks said no. Here's a 2019 second-round pick. Go crazy, have fun.
If you're Jason Kidd and you find out that the Brooklyn Nets are saying we want nothing more than a first-round pick, and the Milwaukee Bucks, and I believe that they actually put this out on the blotter. They said, listen, if the Brooklyn Nets are going to want a first-round pick, we are more than happy to relinquish any intentions of trying to bring Jason Kidd over. We are completely happy and satisfied with our situation. If you're Jason Kidd, what are you thinking? I'm not worth a first-round draft pick?
I guess if you're Jason Kidd, you're going back to your vacation home and just saying, well, damn, I messed that one up pretty good, didn't I?
I'm not coaching any team.
And he's well, I'd say he wouldn't have a career in basketball, but we know the world of sports is quite forgiving if you get results. So maybe he comes back eventually. Maybe he would have come back eventually and gotten results. But yeah, I don't know. It's the Bucks knew they didn't need to give much up. He was the Nets' only option, and on the other side of things, the Nets made it very clear. It's the same exact reason why if a guy wants to be traded, you don't want that becoming public information, because then their stock goes like this. Try to see if the Minnesota Timberwolves this year get compensated fairly for Kevin Love. Once it's known that a guy wants to be traded, then they don't get fair value for him. Same thing with Jason Kidd here.
And the Sharks are in the water.
Yeah, right. And aside from the fact that it's just plain out, flat out strange that a coach is getting traded for draft picks. I mean, that's just odd in its own right. But yeah, I mean, the Nets really didn't have much leverage there. It was quite obvious Jason Kidd was not going back to Brooklyn. So the Bucks, hey, why not? Take 2 second-rounders. I don't care.
At the end of the day, Drew, when we the dust settles, who do you anticipate coaching the Brooklyn Nets in 2014?
That is tough. So it goes down to what names have I heard? I've heard Lionel Hollins, who I actually just mentioned earlier. Um,
George Karl has also been mentioned.
right, George Karl. Mark Jackson, surprisingly, I'm hearing brought up as a long shot, even though on the surface it seems
It's
like
interesting because he was actually one of the first people from I believe Mark Stein was indicating that Mark Jackson's name was being brought up by upper management very rapidly over the course of the weekend. But I guess those sources were erroneous because the name that's been mentioned quite heavily has been Lionel Hollins and George Karl.
right.
And then I believe that there is a foreign head coach, I believe Russian, who they're looking at very heavily to come in and coach the Brooklyn Nets. I probably would have to look up that guy's name, but so far those are the three. So you're right. Mark Jackson went from what was apparently the top runner to all of a sudden kind of fading in the background.
Right. Yeah, and it seems on the surface, it seems to make perfect sense. Mark Jackson, guy grew up in New York. He's, they would love him in Brooklyn. Cal, you think that Mark Jackson wouldn't win over every single fan, maybe even steal some Knicks fans away with his personality and how he gets his teams to play? I think that would be a great fit for Brooklyn, but I don't know exactly why. It seems they're looking to go in a different direction with either Lionel Hollins or George Karl, and quite frankly, I'm not sure you can go wrong there. George Karl, I don't think he'd be considering it if he didn't feel that he was physically able to do it. Remember, he had some health concerns. I believe that actually led directly to his retirement. He must be feeling better if he's considering this. And Lionel Hollins, very good coach. He really gets his guys to play defense. This will sound like a shot at Jason Kidd. It maybe is, maybe isn't, but he handles himself very well. In public, in private, you hear nothing but Lionel Hollins is a gentleman.
I had said that I would have really liked to have seen Lionel Hollins be the head coach for the New York Knicks. I think he would have been perfect. He just has that swagger about him that is, kind of a classy New Yorker type of guy. He's not from New York. Listen, when you listen to him talk, he sounds like he was hanging with B.B. King before he stepped up to the podium. But when he does speak, he speaks with intelligence and he speaks with assertion, and that's the type of coach that you want to have handle the big media of New York City. And I know you understand this more than anything. One of the things, it's one of the biggest pet peeves that I had of Jason Kidd was that even as he was working as, an interim head coach, I want to say, during the summer, he just sounded like he was going to take some time to get it. And even at the end of the year, when they were in the playoffs against the Toronto Raptors, when he was sitting up at the stage talking, he sounded like someone that still was working on being a head coach. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but if you're playing in Brooklyn or you're playing in New York, and maybe it does lend to the point that you brought up earlier, which I thought was a very excellent point. If we had to look at it from another perspective than just the diva complex, this could be a guy who was not really secure in him feeling like he was going to maintain being the head coach, given the fact that this project of this team did not play up and live up to the expectations everyone wanted to see.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's possible he didn't feel supported. I was just thinking, going back to if the Nets do hire this Russian guy, wouldn't it be something if so the Cavs just hired David Blatt, who had a really good career. I think it was with Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel. Wouldn't it be something if we start taking all the Euro coaches now? A mass exodus from Europe, just like now we have so many European players. We'll start taking their coaches too.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what happens. And I actually found out the guy's name is Ettore Messina. So I don't hear any Russian in that, but I'm going to assume that this guy is a legit coach, and if he's going to be brought up and mentioned, it's obviously that it's somebody that I think the Prokhorov and the Russians are very high on, and that they are going to be, seriously considering, these three guys. Drew, just to kind of finalize this, and we're looking at, the big picture here, how long do you give Jason Kidd to be able to still coach in the NBA if he does not succeed with the Milwaukee Bucks? Do you ever see him coaching ever again?
I'm not a guy that says that would project something that uncertain and give a definite answer. But to be honest, Cal, in this case, no. Jason Kidd has such an issue with burning bridges. Looking back on his NBA career and coaching career, I don't know if teams will think that. I'll put it this way. So you asked if he doesn't succeed with Milwaukee, will he stick around? I don't see how he can, because he is a load to deal with off the court, as we can tell. Just from all of his issues with executives, he has the DUI or DWI. I'm not sure which.
Before he even started coaching, he had
right. So he doesn't have a clean legal record either. This is the kind of guy who only sticks around in sports if he gets results. Not getting results like he didn't for the first half of last season, and then he's taking this Milwaukee team and he's not winning there either. I don't see who in their right minds would take him. I will say that the bar is set very low in Milwaukee now. I'm sure you'd agree with. Take a look at the Milwaukee Bucks depth chart and compare it to, I don't know, an 8, 9, 10 seed in the East from this year, and it doesn't really look too good. The bar is set very low for Jason Kidd. He won't have to win. I think if Jason Kidd wins 35 games this year with the Bucks, it'll be looked at as a big success. I don't know.
That's big. That's big speaking. I'm going to lean to the idea that if he could figure out a way to elevate Jabari Parker to play at a level that quickly ascends him to being an all-star, despite whatever the Milwaukee Bucks do as a record-wise, if there is a chemistry, and listen, Jason Kidd has been known to work the system, and one way that you work the system is you make sure that you show favoritism to the star player. If the star player, Jabari Parker, favors Jason Kidd, the highly likelihood that Jason Kidd will wind up keeping that position a lot longer than he actually needs to. And if the Milwaukee Bucks do show a sense of success, it just validates that all of the nonsense that he's just pulled in the last 72 hours obviously meant for something, which meant there was a method to his madness. But that's just something that remains to be seen. Drew Wolin, man, representing for www.nbadraft.net. Make sure that you get up, my man. He is available on the Twitter. If you have any questions, anything in regards to the NBA, especially as we're coming up to the Summer League and as we're getting closer and closer to training camp and eventually the beginning of the 2014-2015 season, catch him on the Twitter side at 914BigD123. Drew, man, I really appreciate you coming on, representing for us here on the Full Court Press, man, and I cannot wait for us to catch up again and kind of further delve into more of this Jason Kidd nonsense as it continues to unfold. I mean, it's just amazing what this guy's done in just a short couple of days.
Yeah, yes, sir. Never a dull moment with sports, but lately Jason Kidd in general.
Most definitely. So for the Full Court Press, Cal Lee and my special guest Drew Wolin, we appreciate you guys. Catch up with me next time as we talk more NBA on the Full Court Press.
I gotta go download this song.